Hi guys, this is Deb, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how I do my beaded row extensions. This is just the way I like to do it. I know there's a million different techniques and ways to do extensions, but this is how I do it, so if you're interested in learning the way that I like to install these, then just go ahead and keep on watching. So the first thing I do is I basically just take out the extension and I brush out all of the regrowth hair. I already did that, but right now I'm going through and cleaning up the section so that I can reinstall the row. It's really important that you take really clean sections. On this specific client, we just only do one row because she's not really looking for length. She's more just looking for added thickness, so we just do one row. And so I go through and I clean up the section. It's really important that you take your time doing this, making sure that everything is nice and clean, that there's no little hairs sticking up or in your way. Sorry, I kind of stand in the way here, but essentially what I'm doing is I'm just going around the head shape. I start kind of up high by the temples, depending on where you want to start your extension row, and I dip it down into a U shape in the back of the head. So again, just making sure everything's brushed up, really clean, really smooth, and I go ahead and secure my section with a hair tie, and then I further secure it with some metal long clips that you can pick up at Cosmoprof or Sally's or Salon Centric. And I just do that so that any little crosshairs or flyaways don't get in the way. Right here I'm spraying with Sebastian Zero Gravity to kind of give me some hold as I comb and secure the section out of the way. So again, using my comb, making sure everything's nice and clean, and then basically I just go through and secure it. And so yeah, that's what I do, and then I'll come back in and install.
We are dreaming in the dark. We are nothing more than dust. Search but you stay lost. We are reaching for the stars, but we're making this too hard. And I wonder where you are. Mysterious, that's the part you always show. 'Cause you're too curious. Maybe you should take it slow.
Okay, so basically after you're done placing the hair out of the way, you're going to go ahead and start mapping out the head shape to make sure you know exactly where you want to place the hair, and then you're going to go ahead and move on to the installation of the row. So right here I'm going ahead and going through and installing the row. I'm super sorry I didn't get the footage of the first two beads. My camera just kept glitching out, but I will show you guys on the other side how I install the first two. But essentially how I create that waterfall effect is, as you guys can see, I just added that third bead, and now I'm going to take the hair from that bead and I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to do a U shape and grab a new section. And the reason I do a U shape is because, I mean, if you do a square or a triangle, that's totally fine. I just found for me personally, doing a U shape, it doesn't create any of those points that are there with a square or a triangle. So in my opinion, it's just a little bit healthier because there's no stress points. And then I'm going to go ahead and hairspray, and then that's just kind of help there's no flyaways when you're putting the bead on. And then I'm just going to slide the bead into place. And as you guys can see, I do 4 beads in every chain, and then I'm going to halfway clamp, and then I'm going to slide and then fully clamp. So I left this footage in for the next 2 beads. I wouldn't really say that they're mistakes, but I wanted to show you guys how simple. Like for instance, on this next bead, I start a brand new chain, and this is how I started the first section, by the way. I basically just take a U shape, put the metal clip down so there's no hairs getting in the way when I clamp, and I slide the bead into place. And on this specific bead, you guys can see I clamped it perfectly fine, but it was just a little bit too off base for my liking, and it's really important that you take it out if that ever happens like I'm doing here, because for instance, if I was to leave this in, after like a week and a half or 2 weeks, this client's going to start to feel like her hair is already super grown out, and it's going to start to create a lot of tension and stress on her section. So that's why I love this method, because if you ever were to make a mistake, it's really easy to just take the bead out and just reinstall it. So that's what I did right here, and I just went ahead and halfway clamped it, slid up, and then clamped it. And then that's how I start each chain. A chain is 4 beads in a row. That's how I start each chain, as I take the first section and then do the second U, and then I clamp it. And so right here you'll notice when I go to put the bead on, it doesn't want to go on, and that's a big indication that there's too much hair in the section. So with this specific client, we found that we do want a little bit of tug when we put her extension bead on, just because she has really fine hair, and through trial and error of just doing her hair, we found that having a little bit more hair in the bead just helps with her retention and keeping her hair healthy. But if you ever get to the point where it's not wanting to go on or having to pull, it's too much. So just take the bead out and then take some of the hair out. And then when you get to the third bead of every chain, that's when you can start doing the waterfall effect, where you cut the hair in half from the previous bead, do your new U shape, put the metal clamp underneath to keep any flyaways out of the way, use some hairspray to smooth any of the additional flyaways, and then put your bead into place. So I want to explain, now that we have gotten to the back of the head, this is kind of where I stop. When I get to the very middle of the back of the head, I stop, and then I basically just go to the other side and repeat the exact same thing on the other side. And then when I get to the middle of the back of the head from the other side, I will basically take both of the end beads from both sides and connect them together. And I'm just explaining that to you guys because, again, my camera glitched out and just wasn't recording, so the only footage I got from this side was me showing you guys how I started the first of this section. So again, I'm just doing the U shape, sliding the bead on, and clamping it into place, and then I'm taking the little ponytail section from this first bead and combining it with the new U shape from the second bead. And then when I did the third bead, it's when I started doing half of the previous section with the new section. And then again, when I get to the back, that's just when I combine. I take the 2 little tails from both very end beads from both sides, and I just slide 2 beads actually on both of the sections, and that's how I secure it. So basically we'll zoom up here in a second so you guys can see the close-up of how it looks, and then basically I would just continue that same pattern that I did on the other side until I met the other bead, and then I would connect both of them together. And that's how I do it. So I'm now moving on over to placing of the hair. This is my absolute favorite part of the entire process, is sewing on the extension hair. What I do with the placement of this hair is, there's not really like a huge rhyme or reason with how I place it. I really just do this so that it secures the wefts into place, so that when I'm sewing, it's really clean and easy for me to not make any mistakes, or it just keeps everything really organized and clean and all of the wefts together. One thing I do like to do though, just to kind of help me stay organized when I'm sewing, is I will, every about 2 to 3 beads, I will put a clamp, just so that I know in between every metal clamp there is at least 2 to 3 beads, so that it reminds me that I have to sew. I usually just do 2 beads in between every metal clip, so that I know that in between each metal clip there's 2 beads I need to sew through. So it's kind of how I do it. Right here I'm noticing that the extension weft is a little bit too far over to the left, so I'm going to go ahead and unclamp the wefts and just adjust everything a little bit over to the right. And it's really important that you do this. Take your time. Don't rush this part, because it's going to make it the next step, which is the sewing, a lot easier for you if you're not rushing and really taking your time and being precise with the placement of the hair. So I'm going to go ahead and place everything, and then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the sewing. So you guys can see I'm just going ahead and smoothly placing everything, following the bead placement, and then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the sewing. So go ahead and keep watching, and I'll come back and explain what I'm doing when I get to that part of the install. Alright, so right here I'm going to begin sewing on the weft. The way I like to sew the weft on, I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can, but hopefully by just paying attention to what I'm doing you guys can kind of see, because it's kind of hard to explain, but essentially what I'm doing is, as you guys can see right here, I'm taking my needle, and I just use a curved needle, and I'm taking it underneath the weft, and I'm taking it underneath the connecting hair in between both of the beads, and pulling it through the loop that is created by the string and tugging up. So again, pulling it through the loop, as you guys can see right here, and then pulling up. So again, I'll explain. I take the needle through underneath the weft, in between both of the beads. So as you guys can remember, when I created the row, I did a chain of beads. So in between two beads, there's a little bit of hair. So I take it underneath the weft, underneath the hair connecting both beads, and then up through the loop and pull up. So again, that's how I'm doing it. Hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of the best way I can think of explaining, but you guys can kind of just watch what I'm doing and see exactly how I do this. And then for the string, I want to just explain how I create my string. I basically just do, I take my arm span and I do my string 2 arm spans. So I basically do my arm span and then I do it again, and that's how I measure out my string. So my string's pretty long to begin with, but the reason I do that is because I actually tie the 2 ends of my strings together, so it's basically just it's basically like a double string, if that makes sense, and that's how I do it, and that's what I find is the most secure, and it makes it really strong, and it lasts a long time. It holds really, really good. So that's how I do it, and I just continue doing this all the way around, and then when I get to the end, how I basically finish off is because there's 2 strings, it's basically essentially 2 strings. It's really just 1 long string, but because I tied it in half, it's like 2 strings. So what I do is I cut it, and then there's 2 ends, and I tie the 2 ends in a double knot, and then I super glue the knot together. And I'm really careful when I do that. I want to explain how I do that because I don't have clip of it. I'm so sorry, you guys. My video camera kept like cutting out clips, and so it just kept overheating, so there was times where I thought I was filming and I actually wasn't, so I'm super sorry about that. But basically I just take the 2 ends together after I tie a double knot at the end, and I just super glue the 2 ends together so that they don't go anywhere. And that's basically how I do it, so I'm just going to let you guys continue to watch this, and thank you guys so much for being here. Because I try to explain it as best as I could, but I'm sure you guys still have some questions. Leave the questions down below and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Follow me over at Deb Vargas Hair if you guys have any questions or want to see further tutorials and more more of my work. I post on there daily, so you guys can check that out. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share if you like this video, and then comment down below what kind of videos you want to see in the future. Thanks so much for being here, guys, and I'll see you guys all in my next video. Bye!